Now let's talk about the coefficient of an algebraic expression. So it's coefficient of a term in an algebraic expression. Algebraic expression. So let me first write it and then I'll explain you what does it actually mean. Coefficient of a term. So the parts of a term which are connected to each other with a multiplication or a division sign. So the part of now this time we are talking about specific term in an algebraic expression. So for each term, in term itself, the parts which are connected to each other with a multiplication or a division sign are called coefficient of each other. Coefficient of each other. So coefficient of each other. Now do not get confused with the term. You know what is a term? We identify the term with a plus and a minus sign. We separate the terms with plus and a minus sign. Now this time, once we have identified the term, the coefficient will be found in that specific term. So in specific term, whatever parts we have, they are connected to each other either with a multiplication sign or a division sign. They are called the coefficient of each other. Now let's try to understand it with some example. Let's say we have A and B are two friends. A and B are two friends. Let me just take the specific name. So let's say we have Deepak and let's say Rahul. We have Deepak and Rahul, and these are two friends. Did I spell it correct? Yeah, Deepak and Rahul. We have Deepak and Rahul, they are friends. If I'll say that Deepak is friend of Rahul, if I'll say Deepak is friend of Rahul, I can also say that simply means that Rahul is also a friend of Deepak. They are interconnected with each other. They share the same relation of friendship here. Similarly, in coefficient, if one will be coefficient of other, that means other will also be coefficient of the first one. Now let's try to understand it with an example. So, for example, if if we have let's say 5x to the power 2 minus 3x. So now when we look at this algebraic expression, we know it has got two terms. But we need to understand the coefficient of each term. That means now we'll look specifically at this first term. So let's try to identify the coefficient of this term, which is 5x squared. So we don't see any sign between 5 and x squared. So if I don't see any sign between 5 and x squared, this means I'm writing it separately. This means 5 times x squared, x to the power 2. That means between 5 and x squared, there's a sign of multiplication. Now when I identify there's a sign of multiplication, that means I know that 5 is a coefficient of x square and x square is a coefficient of 5. So that means what can I say here? I can say I can say here that 5 is a coefficient 5 is a coefficient of x square. In same way, I can also say that x square is a coefficient of 5. This is for individual term. We are talking about the individual term here. So now when we see here, let's look at here. This was the algebraic expression, which is 5x squared minus 3x. We are not talking about the minus 3x right now. We are taking individual term, each term, because coefficient will exist in each term. So when we talk about this first term, which is 5x squared, now when we don't see any sign between 5 and x squared, it simply means there's a sign of multiplication. So remember it. between a number and a variable, or a variable and a variable, when we don't see any sign, this simply means that there's a sign of multiplication. Very important concept that you should remember here. So when I look at this, I can say 5x squared. So in 5x squared, 5 is a coefficient of x squared. And similarly, we say that x squared is also a coefficient of 5. Remember this example of friendship. The example of this friendship which I gave. Let me just write this in the box. It's just for the explanation. This part is just for the explanation here. So you can remember it. This is just the explanation part. Now let's talk about the other term, which is minus 3x squared. So now we want to talk about the minus 3x squared. Let's see. Minus 3x squared. Now we have got a sign, the negative sign also. So in this negative sign, we'll say that minus 3 is the coefficient of x. Sorry, there's no square here. Let me correct it. It's minus 3x, not x squared. It's only minus 3x. Let me just correct it. Minus 3x. So minus 3 is the coefficient of x, and we can also say that x is the coefficient of minus 3. So they are interconnected to each other. This is what you need to remember. I just corrected it. It is x, not the x square, because this was our question. I hope you got the idea. Let me quickly repeat what we just discussed. So coefficient of a term will be identified by a multiplication or a division sign. And this will be found in each term of an algebraic expression. If we have 5 terms in an algebraic expression, for each term we can identify the coefficient. Which one are the coefficient? We only have to look for multiplication or division sign. Let's take another example and then you can try this question on your own. So let's say if I am writing 8x to the power 3 plus 7x to the power 2. Now try this question. So you can pause the video here and then try answering this question. Try to identify the coefficient for both the terms. So I'm sure you may have got the idea here. You may have got the answer. Now let me explain here. So first we'll talk about this first term, which is 8x cubed. So in 8x cube, I can say that 8 is the coefficient of x to the power 3. Now remember, similarly, I can also say that x to the power 3 is the coefficient of 8. I hope you are getting the point here. We are looking for multiplication or a division sign. Now let's talk about the second term, which is 7x squared. So in 7x squared, I can say that 7 is the coefficient of x squared. Now remember, it's from both the sides. So I can also say that x squared is the coefficient of 7. So they share like friendship. A is a friend of B. That means B is also the friend of A. So similarly, if 8 is the coefficient of x to the power 3, that means that x to the power 3 is also the coefficient of 8. This was the example of multiplication. Now let's look the example if we have division. Then what can we see? So let's say if I have plus x squared divided by 3. Now when we have this, now see what can I do here? This x divided by 7. If we have got this x divided by 7, now tell me, can I not write this term as 1 by 7 multiplied by x plus same thing I can do here. I can write 1 by 3 multiplied by x square multiplied by x square. Now I think you can identify what can be the coefficient here. So we will say that this 1 by 7, 1 upon 7 is the coefficient of x. I'll say here that 1 upon 7 is the coefficient of x. And similarly, we can see that x is the coefficient of 1 by 7. So I hope you have got the idea how we are identifying the coefficient of a term. Now you will notice that we have one is a number and second is a variable, is a letter. So we have got specific name also for them. Now here we can discuss the types of coefficient. So types of coefficient, we have two types of coefficient, the different names. So one is known as the numerical numerical coefficient, and second is called as the literal coefficient. Literal coefficient. These are the types of coefficient. So numerical means number. Any number will be called the numerical coefficient, and literal means letter. So any letter like A, B, C, X, Y, Z, those are the letters. That is called the literal coefficient. That means, see, what I can write here in the same example. In the same example, I can say, or let me take this one example. We have not defined this one. So let me write this. So we have here 1 by 3 multiplied by x square. So how can I say here? I can say that 1 by 3 is numerical coefficient of x square. Because we know 1 by 3 is a number and numerical coefficient means number. So 1 by 3 is called the numerical coefficient of x square. And if you have understood this, I think you can guess by now how can we write this x square. We can write x square is literal coefficient of 1 by 3. So I think you may have got the idea what is numerical coefficient and what is the literal coefficient. So let me give you another question and then you can pause it and try answering the question on your own. If I write 8y to the power 4, now tell me the numerical coefficient and the literal coefficient in this. Pause the video and try answering the question. So I'm sure you may have got the answer, but let's see if you got the right answer or not. So here 8 is numerical coefficient because it's simple. 8 is a number and number is numerical. So coefficient of what? Of y to the power 4. And y is a letter or a variable. So we say y to the power 4 is literal coefficient of 8. So let me quickly revise once again what we just discussed here. We discussed about the coefficient of a term in an algebraic expression. So for each individual term, you can identify uh, what is an coefficient for each term. Okay, I think you may not be able to see this part. Let me make this visible here. So now I think you can see it. This is the part that we were discussing here. So let me quickly revise it once again. So the types of coefficient that we were discussing, in the types of coefficient we have numerical coefficient and the literal coefficient. So in numerical coefficient we have numbers and in literal coefficient we have letters. So when we talk about the number, in this example 1 by 3 is number. So 1 by 3 is numerical coefficient of x square and x square is the literal coefficient of 1 by 3. Now similarly when I write another example which is 8y to the power 4. So this 8 is the numerical coefficient of y to the power 4 and y to the power 4 is literal coefficient of 8. So I think you may have got the idea. Now I'm sure you may not have been able to see this because I was there. I did not check it. So now let me write another question for you, and this is your homework. You can try it and try to find the right answer for this question. The question here is 15 z to the power 5. Now try this question and see in this 15z to the power 5 in this question, can you identify what is the numerical coefficient and what is the literal coefficient? So just pause it and try to answer this question. Now I'm sure you may have got the answer. So let me tell you this. Now 15 is the number. So 15 is numerical coefficient of z or z to the power 5. And z to the power 5 is the literal coefficient of. So I'm sure you may have got the idea. Just go through it once again. If there's any doubt, let me know.